Last night, just as I was finishing a segment on this show about how billionaire Harlan Crow paid roughly $100,000 in boarding school tuition for the grandnephew of Clarence Thomas, the Washington Post dropped yet another story about the high-living Supreme Court justice. This time, it has to do with another one of his friends, Leonard Leo, who just happens to be the head of the Federalist Society. Leo, as you may have heard on the show, is the architect of the current conservative Supreme Court and the current federal bench. According to the Washington Post, Leo arranged for Ginny Thomas to get paid tens of thousands of dollars for consulting work over a 10-year period. The Post reviewed documents that showed that Leo instructed Republican pollster Kellyanne Conway, you remember her as Trump's 2016 campaign manager and alternative facts lady, to bill a nonprofit group he advises and use that money to pay Ginny Thomas. The same year, the nonprofit, the Judicial Education Project, filed a brief to the Supreme Court in a landmark voting rights case. What they uncovered next was even more disturbing. According to documents, Leo told Conway he wanted her to give Ginny Thomas another $25,000, and he emphasized that the paperwork should have no mention of Ginny, of course. Of course. Leo told the Washington Post it is of no secret that Ginny Thomas has a long history of working on issues within the conservative movement, and part of that work has involved gauging public attitudes and sentiment. The work she did here did not involve anything connected with either the court's business or with other legal issues. And knowing how disrespectful, malicious, and gossipy people can be, I've always tried to protect the privacy of Justice Thomas and Ginny. Now, I should note that NBC News has not seen the documents cited by the Washington Post or independently verified its reporting. But yesterday, Texas Senator John Cornyn, a former judge, dug up this old defense when he was asked about the story.
Well, I know Harlan Crow and I know Clarence Thomas, and they're both honorable men. This is part of a 32-year smear campaign that started with his confirmation hearing. I played the video for people who don't remember it, where he referred to it as a high-tech lynching.
Yeah, okay. Crow told the Dallas Morning News that ProPublica, the nonprofit news organization that first published the piece on Crow and Thomas, had an agenda to destabilize the Supreme Court. So basically, for Harlan Crow, it's the media exposing Clarence and Ginny's shady behavior that's destabilizing the court, not the stench of corruption or upending 50 years of precedent to wipe out the rights of half the population or eroding church-state separation or the increasingly vindictive whining by the conservative justices. Got it. Joining me now is Melissa Murray, professor of law at New York University, and Ian Millhiser, senior correspondent at Vox and author of The Agenda, How a Republican Supreme Court is Reshaping America. Ian, welcome to the show. I want to show you a picture because I feel like it is emblematic of what we are dealing with this current court. Here it is. It's a painting, a lovely painting that features old Clarence with his friends. To the left of Clarence is Harlan Crow. The man in the middle under the sculpture is Mark Paoletta. He's a close family friend of the Thomases, worked in the Trump administration. Helping to prepare for confirmation hearings, prepare people for confirmation hearings, including two of the court hearings. The man in the glasses is Leonard Leo, who's funneled all that money to Ginny. And then the man in the red shorts is Peter Bo Rutledge, dean of the law school at the University of Georgia, former law clerk to Thomas. And he took up a case in 2008 before the Supreme Court. And guess what? He won that case. And Clarence Thomas did not recuse. Your thoughts on this court, which does seem to be made up of a bunch of rich guys and their friends, or a bunch of friends of rich guys, I should say.
Yeah. So here's what shocks me about all of this. You know, when I take White House staffers out to coffee, they won't let me pay for their latte. You know, I used to work at a think tank. We'd have Hill staffers come over sometimes for lunch meetings, and they would always ask, how much did this lunch cost? The reason why is because if it's more than $25, they're not allowed to eat it. Like, everyone in government has such strict ethics rules, except for the Supreme Court. In the Supreme Court, it's apparently fine to have all of your vacations be paid for by some billionaire Republican donor. It's apparently fine to have your mother's home paid for, to have your kids' tuition paid for by a billionaire. And again, this is not how it works anywhere else in government. I don't understand why the most unaccountable people in government wind up having the least ethics rules.
Yeah, I mean, Melissa, look, when I was managing editor of theGrio.com, I went to a lot of these sort of open sort of chats with Valerie Jarrett when she was a senior White House official. You couldn't buy her a cup of coffee. Like literally everyone paid for their own lunch. It was like a brown bag situation. As Ian said, this is so strict. And then these guys, it really looks to the outside looking in like what the Supreme Court basically is, at least as far as the conservatives are concerned, is a place where billionaires go to launder their ideas. Because these folks, especially Clarence, seem to be willing to do whatever it is far-right billionaires want when it comes to their rulings. But, take me and my sons on vacation. The kid who's supposedly in need, the grandnephew, he's talked about going out to the private resort in the Adirondacks. He's talked about cruises on the super yacht, this kid Martin. He's been to the Caribbean. He's been all over the world. And he's supposedly an indigent young man who needed his tuition paid. It looks like oligarchy, not law.
Well, to be clear, I think we have to be really precise here. This is just a smear campaign designed to delegitimize the court. So I'll just say at the outset, there are no provable allegations of corruption. But what there is here is a real appearance of impropriety. And the appearance alone, I think, is enough to be concerning. When you layer on top of that appearance of impropriety, the fact that there is an internal inconsistency in the logic of this, then it's even more pronounced. Like Justice Thomas is likely to write the majority opinion dismantling affirmative action at the end of the Supreme Court. Affirmative action as government largesse handed out by white people to members of colored communities. And yet here we have unbelievable displays of largesse given by one patron to this man who in other circumstances would be unwilling to have this kind of favor extended to members of minority communities. I mean, so there's an internal inconsistency here that is absolutely mind-boggling. Again, you should be angry because just the appearance of this is a problem.
Well, I mean, here's the challenge. I'll stay with you just for a moment, Melissa. Back in 1993, the New York Times reported Clarence Thomas told clerks he wants to stay on the court until 2034. Why? The liberals made my life miserable for 43 years, and I'm going to make their lives miserable for 43 years. When you have him talking like that, when you have Scalia with these whiny, kvetching about anybody daring to criticize the court, and then you see that it just so happens that every single ruling by this right-wing majority just happens to align perfectly with the ideology of people like Leonard Leo and Harlan Crow. It's too coincidental, I think, for me as a non-lawyer looking at it, for it to be realistic. It feels like they're just doing the bidding of the people who pay them. And as you said, there's no proof of that, but that sure is what it looks like. How can the court have any credibility if that's the way it looks?
I mean, that's the whole point, though, Joy. The court absolutely faith and trust in it as an institution in order for its opinions to have any force. The court isn't like Congress. It doesn't have the power of the purse. It's not like the president. It lacks the power of the sword. The only thing the court has to keep us obeying whatever it puts out is the fact that we believe that what the court is doing is legitimate and fair. And when these justices impair their own legitimacy, this is not the media doing this. This is the justices themselves delegitimizing the court. What happens? The court's institutional stability is severely compromised. And I imagine there are members of the court who are very concerned, among them Chief Justice John Roberts, if for no other reason, he's concerned about the appearance here.